Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a great day at the Venues and Events Live event. I've been online today on our booth and it seems to have been really busy. So thank you very much for joining us. Our panel session today is going to be why we should all be promoting wellbeing within the workplace. And I've got three lovely ladies with me who I'll be asking questions to throughout the session. So firstly, I would like to introduce Amy Gallagher. Amy is a transformation coach. She works from the inside out, guiding senior female leaders to rise up and attract success and happiness the feminine way. So hello, Amy. Just give us a quick wave.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Secondly, we've got Louise Warren. Louise is from Eventwell. Louise has actually worked in events for 16 years now, both in the UK and overseas, for a variety of venues and agencies. She's no Chief Operating Officer for Eventwell, a social enterprise that supports the mental health and well-being of those that work in the event, creative and hospitality and travel tourism sections. Thank you. Hi, Louise.
Hi, good afternoon.
And lastly, we've got Claudine Martin, who works for the Ministry of Defence. She's an EA for the Ministry of for the Ministry of Defence. Claudine is an award-winning PA and a serving soldier. She is working as a PA to the Director of the Army Engagement and Communications at the Ministry of Defence. So, hi, Claudine.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, nice to meet you. Okay, so we're going to get started with our first question. I'm actually going to come to you first, Louise. It may seem like there are some obvious answers to this question that I'm going to give you, but I think it's actually a question worth putting out there. And why do you feel it's important for employers and leaders to encourage well-being amongst their staff? And what do you feel the consequences are if this isn't taken seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly in the current climate, as we all know, it's a really, really challenging time at the moment. But besides all of that, I think it's really, really important for all employers to really embrace the well-being and assess the culture of their companies. It's so important to look after employee well-being because a lot of people do get stressed with their roles, and people want to feel comfortable being able to speak up if they're struggling or have someone to go to. And it's all about creating good company culture, good working environment, and in that way then a lot of employees would be able to do their jobs in a more positive manner. There's nothing worse than feeling stressed or feeling like they can't go and talk to anybody if they're struggling. And definitely, I think it's something that definitely needs to be looked into more.
Thank you, Louise. Amy, same question to yourself. Why do you feel it's important for employers to encourage well-being amongst their staff?
I think there's the obvious ones, isn't there? It's about employee retention, so ensuring that you keep your employees happy, therefore they'll stay with you, and ensuring that they are turning up for work. I read a report only yesterday that said about a lot of employees are calling in sick for work due to stress levels, and that's mainly because of long working hours. And one of the second reasons was because they don't really like the style of their manager. So I think in order for well-being is so important because it means that the employees will be happier, and that means then that they thrive, and it creates a thriving culture. I used to work in the corporate world for many years, and you could tell the moment you walked into a company whether the culture was thriving or whether there was quite a lot of unrest amongst the employees. So even attracting new staff as well, that would be another reason why having a great wellness policy should be on top of the list.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Amy. And lastly, Claudine, would you like to answer this one as well from your perspective at the company?
Yes, just to echo what Louise and Amy have just said, it is important that employers take well-being seriously. what good it is if, as a employer, you've got employees who are not physically or mentally fit. Just what Amy said, it's for retention.
Yeah.
If you've got a business and you don't have the employees to do the job, then you won't have an effective business. And I also believe that as an employer, they've got a duty of care to their employees and their staff. It should be taken seriously. You've employed those individuals, you're paying them to do a job. And if they're not physically or mentally fit to do the job, then it's pointless. And I think it's definitely something that should be taken seriously.
Lovely. Thank you, Claudine. Just before we go on, just for the audience, if you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat box and we can come to a Q&A at the end for you. Okay. On to the next question. Louise, have you got any examples of situations where staff wellbeing has not been a priority for employers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said at the beginning, I've worked in the events industry for 16 years, and the role of an event planner actually was listed as the fifth most stressful job that you can have. And I have definitely worked for a number of event companies over the last 16 years where employee well-being definitely hasn't been taken into consideration. I had one example where I worked for a company where they really insisted on clocking in and clocking out, literally would kind of be calling you if you were 1 minute late for work. And I just think that that's going really sort of back into old days, and it's not taking people's situations into any kind of positive frame of mind, and it just makes people feel like they've got to be 100% all the time. And I can't bear working in that kind of environment where there's no sort of sense of flexibility and that you're constantly being checked up upon that you are doing your job properly. Obviously, as an event planner, it is quite stressful. That we, as an event, there's lots of things that need to be taken into consideration in terms of, hiring of venues, production. There's lots of different elements, and obviously you've got to be on top of that at all times. But you kind of also want to be in an environment where you want to be able to speak up if you are feeling overwhelmed or, feeling a bit stressed. And I think there's so many people out there, not just in the events industry, but in other industries where people don't speak up about their mental health or how they're feeling, because they feel like that if they do speak up, then they're going to be looked upon as, oh, well, she or he can't do the job properly. And that's completely wrong. Everybody can do a good job, but it's just taking people's different situations into light. So yeah, definitely. I think, we're moving in terms of Eventwell, we're moving towards getting, more events companies to really bring wellbeing into the workplace.
Fantastic. I mean, that's good to hear. I mean, Amy, have you got any examples of situations where staff with well-being, sorry, it's the afternoon. We'll get there soon.
I do.
Maybe a drink after this. Any situations where staff well-being has not been a priority? Same sort of question to you, Amy.
Absolutely. So I used to be a senior leader in the digital world, and then after that I became a consultant. So I managed to work for a variety of different companies. For some, it was a tick box exercise. It was like, yep, we have a wellness policy, tick the box, and it was forgotten. And I think the biggest thing that I saw was that they would pay lip service and say, we take wellness seriously in the workplace, but it wasn't happening even at the top. And what you would get was the senior leadership team working weekends, working on holidays, expecting their staff to be on all of the time. And it was like, but wellness can't be a priority if your senior leadership team are just striving and exhausted all of the time because they're working so many long hours. And then what that would do was create this culture that's what everybody had to do. The other thing that I see as well is they say, yeah, we're doing wellness, and they put on a yoga class. And that's it, and I teach yoga, and the yoga is brilliant, but it's almost like they go immediately sometimes to the physical. Let's do some exercise classes or give, give people subsidize their gym membership. Great, that's one part of it, but there's also emotional wellness, mental wellness, financial wellness. Wellness covers so many different areas, and sometimes I just don't think companies are paying enough attention to that, the whole, what it means to be well in the whole sense.
Yeah, I agree. We have got some questions, but I will come back to those at the end. So Claudine, in general and outside of the current situation regarding the pandemic and working from home, what are key things that leaders need to consider regarding their staff's well-being?
I think first thing first, when it comes to that, as an employer, I think one of the key things regarding this is that an employer should know their employees. You need to understand what their personal circumstances are. I'll use myself an example. When I was on the lockdown, I was one of those people who are in the vulnerable category. And my boss knows this, and he would constantly call in just to check in, see how am I getting in terms of my appointments, if I'm able to go to my appointments, what about my medication, how the children are doing, because the children obviously weren't going to school. So I think employers need to take into consideration their employee situation, because with what we were experiencing on the lockdown, a lot of people were getting a lot of mental health issues being on lockdown because they're not used to having that social bubble, not going to work, not being able to see family and friends. So having an understanding and of the personal situation of their employees is quite key. I also think that by knowing your employees, and if you know there's something that's happening, what can you do as an employer? You can signpost them to relevant things that they could do. So, for example, if you know of a employee who's having some issues, yes, we were on lockdown, so probably physically they couldn't do stuff, but you could signpost them to websites or organization that could offer help. And I think those are key things that an employer should take into consideration.
Lovely. Thank you, Claudine. And Louise, the same question to you. Again, outside the current situation, what are the key things leaders need to consider regarding their staff's well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I echo everything that Claudine just said. I think it's really important that an employer should be aware of any employee situation. I also think, it's also to have really good communication with your employees. And I think it's also really good to ask your employees every day, how are you today? I think, when an employee is asked that question by the employer, then I think it makes them feel like they're cared for, that they do have someone to go and talk to if they're not okay. Those are four very key and important words to ask any employee. And also, in terms of, getting the employee to speak up, I think also employers need to kind of look at maybe designating, one of their workers, maybe taking a mental health first aid training course. That's something that we're promoting a lot at the moment. And I think that it would be good to have, one person in each organization to have a dedicated mental health person or wellbeing person in the organization, that there is somebody there that any staff can go and talk to if they feel they need to.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Louise. So from PA Life's perspective, even before lockdown, our research showed that PAs and EAs had shown a lot that they were working very long hours. And it was actually a major issue for them beforehand, as well as always being on the go and expected to answer emails out of office, etc. I mean, how can PAs themselves try to address that problem with their execs, and how much responsibility should the employers do to avoid their staff working longer hours? Amy, I'll come to you on that one.
Sure. I think we've spoken a lot about the responsibility of the employer, but I think there's also the responsibility of the employee as well. And I know they need to have a safe environment to be able to speak up in, but it's about setting clear boundaries, and I saw it, I used to do it, and I see it with my clients now. being busy is sometimes worn as a badge of honor. I think it's like, I was working till 10 o'clock last night and I got up at 6 a.m. because there's this idea of our jobs validate us in some ways. So it's almost like looking for that external validation. So I know sometimes it's something that's quite deep rooted in people that if they're working long hours and they're on all the time, maybe somehow it does validate them. However, if you don't want to work long hours, it's really, really important to have clear boundaries for yourself that you then pass on to your employer. And I know as humans, we can struggle to set clear, strong boundaries and keep to them. You know, it's something that comes up time and time again with my clients. But what I think is really important is to say, right, when I feel good and when I feel like I am nurturing myself, at what point do I say my cutoff time is to when I will receive, answer emails? And if your employer requires you to be on at a certain point in the evening, you need to then negotiate, you start later or you have time off in the afternoon. There's got to be give and take in the relationship. And I know it takes confidence, like I said at the beginning, to speak up, but you have to have those clear boundaries within yourself first. I know that your wellness matters to be able to have those conversations, but boundaries are the key. And setting them and keeping to them. And you might upset your boss for the first few times, but eventually they will get used to the way that you work. And it is about having that strength to do it, but clear, strong boundaries is the key.
Lovely. Thank you, Amy. And Claudine, same question to you.
I agree with everything that Amy has just said. I'm guilty of it as well, but it's true. You need to set those clear boundaries when it comes to that. When I was on the lockdown, I'm guilty for doing that as well. When it first started, I wasn't as busy as I would be when I'm normally in work because my boss had all his flights and everything that he was doing cancelled. And what I did was, because I didn't want him to think that I'm at home not doing anything, just what Amy was saying is having that we're seeking that external validation. And I would just keep my Skype logged in, even when I haven't got anything to do, I'm just sitting on the sofa watching TV. I would just keep my Skype logged in so that my boss think that I'm really busy. But then after a while, I thought, no, why should I do that? It's a situation that we're going through, which is out of my control. We've got, it had nothing to do with, we didn't start that. And I just communicated with my boss and I said, I've not been busy as I would be, with what we're going through. And I just set that boundary in the end. I was like, no, when it gets to 5 o'clock, I will log off. I'm at home. The children are at home. I can take that time, do something with the kids, cook dinner. So it's all about communicating with your boss as well. But in terms of what your employer can do, I think the employee as well has a responsibility into that. You have to communicate with your boss, because if he thinks that you're not doing anything or whatever, he then will have that expectation for you to be working long hours. You just have to communicate with them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claudine. Louise, I'm going to come to you next. With many still working from home, concerns over mental health and wellbeing have intensified. What can individuals do to protect their own wellbeing? And interestingly enough, actually, I think we had a question from the audience along the same lines as this question. So that would be quite interesting to hear from you, Louise, as what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to be careful when we're working from home that you don't fall into bad habits. I think first and foremost, obviously, and just to reiterate what Claudine said, I think, and Amy as well, it's about setting boundaries, even though you are working from home. So if your normal working hours are 9 to 5, stick to the normal 9 to 5 working hours. I also think it's really important as well, and it might sound a bit daft, but I think when you're working from home, we are probably a bit reluctant sometimes to maybe get out of our pajamas. I think it's really important actually for you to actually get up and take a shower and actually do as if you were going to work normally. I think it's really important that you keep in that routine. The other thing as well is to make sure that you're getting away from the screen as well, that you are taking time out, that you're taking breaks, that you're also getting outside for fresh air as well. Because if you were in the office, those are probably the things that you would be doing anyway if you were going out for lunch or whatever. But because you're at home, you're probably only just going to go next door to the kitchen and grab something and not actually go outside. So I think it's really important to, again, set yourself boundaries in terms of your normal working day if you were in the office, and have that at home as well. And obviously there's going to be days where perhaps maybe you don't want to get out your pajamas, I don't know, but I think it is really important to kind of stay in that routine.
Thank you, Louise. Amy, same question to you. With many still working from home, what concerns over mental well-being have intensified? What do you think individuals can do to protect their well-being?
I agree. It's just because, so I've got friends even who say, I don't spend an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back traveling from the office. So I'm at my screen an hour and a half earlier, and I want to shake them and say, don't do it. Go to the gym first. Go for a lovely walk. Go for a nice breakfast. And I think it is still really key that you are doing the things around your work that nurture you. So like you said, going for a walk, having your lunch, taking some time out of screen time. And maybe also, I think when you're at home, I work from home, and I know when I first transitioned from office to home, at first it felt quite isolating. So it felt really important just to get outside and just see other people, even if you weren't interacting with them. So I do think that, those are the key things. Don't just say, right, I'm at home, therefore I spend all day looking at my screen, answering emails, and it's a chance for my employer to get more out of me. It's about using your day to also nurture yourself and create social interaction, time out as well. It is okay to go and sit down and watch TV or read your book or do whatever you need to do, and to not feel guilty about it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much, Amy. Claudine, what do you think employees and leaders can do to help support their staff for their own well-being?
Yeah, I think communication is key with employers and their employees in terms of supporting their staff. If the employer has a wellness policy, then that needs to be communicated. The awareness regarding their policy needs to be distributed around the workplace or wherever it is, so the employees can know about it. For some, it's often seen where there's a stigma to certain parts of wellness, like mental health, where a lot of people are too scared to talk about it. So I think it needs to have the awareness regarding that, so they can be aware of it. I also believe that I think Louise mentioned it about an employer nominating someone to do the mental health course. So at least you've got like a first aider, so the employees have someone that they can go to. I also believe maybe a mentoring scheme will also be a good idea that they can do to support their staff, because too often you might have someone that they nominate as the first aider, but an individual might not be comfortable going to that person. So I think if they put in a mentoring scheme, especially a reverse mentorship, then at least that person will have someone that they're comfortable speaking to, rather than bottling things up. So there's so much that they can do to support their staff. But those are a few ideas. I think that's quite good.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claudine. And Louise, same question to you.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, actually, and we probably haven't touched on this yet, but I think it's all very well making sure that your employees are okay and that they feel supported, but also as an employer, you also need to make sure that you're looking after your own well-being and mental health, because if you're not looking after yourself, then there's no way you could possibly look after your employees as well. It's kind of like that a scenario where you put on your oxygen mask first, when you're on the plane. If you deal with yourself first, then you can help others. So I think that's really important to highlight that. And as an employer, set examples for well-being and looking after your mental health. So going back to if your employees at the moment are working from home, put in guidelines, boundaries for them, making sure that they are only working their normal hours. Maybe give suggestions as to what they can be doing outside of normal working hours, highlight what you're doing as kind of, I suppose, motivation or inspiration to your employees about what they can do in this situation.
Brilliant, thank you. I suppose it's leading from the front, really, isn't it? As
Absolutely,
a leader,
yeah.
You're demonstrating how you should be acting and everything else. Brilliant. Currently at the moment, we've noticed quite a lot that people feel like they are constantly on the go, regardless of anything else happening in their lives. What do you think could be done about this? Amy, I'm going to come to you on this one.
And this is where being on is in, they're constantly either on screen, on their phones and available. I'm going to come back to the boundaries again, Charlotte. I just think that is absolutely key. But the thing is, in order to be able to set those boundaries, you've got to know within yourself first what you are willing to do and what you are willing to not do, and to not take the lead from other people. Sometimes you might go into an environment and go, blimey, everyone works till 7 p.m. here. I want to go home at 5:30, and then you're sort of following their example because you feel like you need to fit in. And I think it's important, don't do the fitting in, really set the boundaries based on what works for you, and know how it also affects you. We're all really good at saying, I'm so stressed sometimes, but we've gone way too far at that point. So it's at what point, we need to really start taking into account what makes you still feel like you can commit to your job and offer, yourself up as a really good employee, but still feel like you are filling up your own well at the same time. And that's key. And if you don't have that awareness, you're just going to be led either by your boss or the people around you.
I think not saying I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. That's my favourite.
Yes, exactly. I used to say that. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Louise, I'm going to come to you. Same question. Have you got any sort of tips on how you can not be on the go all the time?
Absolutely. And again, as reiterating what Amy said, it is all about setting boundaries. And so many times we ask people, certainly in our industry, in the events industry, you'll say to somebody, how are you? And they always reply, oh, I'm so busy, and then you kind of ask a question of, well, why are you so busy? What's going on? Are you able to delegate out? Are you able to ask for help? You've got to kind of look again back at yourself and go, well, what's the situation? Why am I so busy? I also think as well, like in terms of being on all the time, again, coming back to boundaries, employees need to speak up when they think they can't manage something, or if they think something is wrong. As a prime example the other day, and again, going back to kind of examples of where company culture needs to change. I was told of a couple of days ago about an organisation which is kind of expecting the workforce to kind of work 9 to 6 with a 20-minute break in the day. And to me, that's again going backwards. We need to really kind of change that culture and be a little bit more flexible as well. I think, we often use the word presenteeism now and about how that's important for people to be at work all the time. When actually, as we've seen in the current climate, people are still able to do their jobs properly by working from home. So I think it's really key to kind of have that little bit more flexibility and don't, feel like they have to be present and on call all the time. And then that kind of retracts away from the opposite, absenteeism, because then if your workforce aren't as stressed or as, if they don't feel like they can do the job, then they're not going to be absent from work, if that makes sense. So it's just looking after everybody within the organisation and setting boundaries.
Thank you. I know I said I'd go to the Q&A at the end, but we've got a question in the chat box that's just popped up, which is actually quite relevant. The last one here. So how do you encourage these open and honest conversations within the workplace? Amy, do you want to maybe answer that one for us?
Sure. I mean, your first port of call is your manager. And I remember as a people manager, I made sure that I had regular one-to-ones with all of my team. And I can't believe how many times I either ask friends or clients or whoever, I take it you have regular one-to-ones with your manager, and they're like, No. Or, yeah, they're in the diary, but they never happen. You have to make sure if they cancel it, you make sure that you rearrange it, because that is your platform to create a relationship with your manager and to be able to voice your concerns. Absolutely. And if anyone's watching and you haven't got regular one-to-ones with your boss, ask for it. Seriously, you need to ask for it. They are so important.
Amy, I'm going to tell Sarah you said that. I'm going to say Sarah.
So I think that's the first port of call. And the other thing is, maybe as well, if there's some companies really encourage like building up different forums for different groups of people as well. I know I've worked for a couple of really big retailers who are great at having almost like champions to say, right, we're creating a group for busy mums, or we're creating groups that specifically talk about mental health. So they create these forums and really safe places for people to join and to start having those open conversations. And I think employers should also really, really encourage that, rather than being fearful that it might be a place for people to just start bad mouthing. But I think sometimes people just need to know that there's other people in the same position as them, and then they'll speak up.
Brilliant, thank you. Claudine, from your point of view, the same sort of question, how do you encourage these open and honest conversations within the workplace? I mean, how do you approach your boss with these sorts of things?
You know what is exactly what you've said, Amy. You need to have those a one-to-one with your boss, because if there's something brewing or something is happening, sometimes all it takes is just having a conversation with that person, just to alleviate certain issues. And that's what we've done in our workplace. We have we do our mid-year. When it comes up to our appraisal, we do halfway. But if we feel like we need to address it beforehand, you can have as many mid-year appraisals you want. That's what we've got in place. So I think the key thing is to address whatever the issue is always to address it. And if by addressing it, there's nothing coming from it, then obviously escalate it further. But I think it's important that you address those issues with your boss by having those one-to-one.
Brilliant, thank you. And before we go on to the rest of the Q&A, we'll just finish up with our last question. And I'm going to go around all the panelists, and I'm going to ask, could you tell us 3 things that employers can do to support their staff's well-being, and 3 individuals that individuals can do for themselves? So I'll start with you, Louise. Would you like to give us your 3?
Yeah, sure. So I think as an employer, I think it's good to kind of maybe think outside the box in terms of, motivating your employees. I think, we're all very guilty of, let's go for networking, office drinks on a Friday afternoon. Well, that's kind of a bit boring now. Let's, think outside the box. I mean, you can do absolutely anything. Bring somebody into the organization, maybe organize a cooking course or a cooking class. Those types of things to bring into the organization, where you spend an afternoon, employees can spend an afternoon doing something creative, and get them kind of out of working mode and kind of networking with each other as a team. Again, coming back to communications, second thing, I think, as we've mentioned today, I think it's really key to kind of have a wellbeing champion within the workplace, or even just a group of people. Maybe hold lunchtime sessions. Maybe there's a room in the office where people can go to at lunchtime if they feel like they need to go and speak to anybody. Those types of things. And I think from the employee point of view, I think, again, it's about setting boundaries, making sure that you are getting regular breaks. If you're into exercise, maybe, go to your yoga classes. If we were back in the office environment, get into the situation where you go out for a walk at lunchtime or go to the gym. And also maybe, again, think outside the box and join other groups, it's all really key to keep talking with each other, start a book club, that kind of stuff. I think there's lots of things and lots of ideas out there that lots of people can do to help make sure that you're looking after yourself, and well-being is number 1.
Thank you. Claudine, same question to you. Quick 3 things that employers can do to support their staff's well-being, and 3 that individuals can do.
Yes, I think one of the main things an employer can support their employees, and I've said it before, having a wellness policy is quite important. And if they do have that policy, they need to communicate it. They need to ensure that their employees is aware that there is one. I also believe that they need to have a support system in place. So if they've got any employees with any issues, they've got a policy or a system in place to support them. I also agree with Louise about doing activities, doing the nice stuff for well-being. So having probably a Christmas party, or after work party, a get together, a team building event. Those are good incentives for retention and having a positive working environment. I think for the employees, also I agree as well, you need to set boundaries. You need to do that, because if you don't do that, then what's the point? Their employer is not going to know what's happening. I think also the employees need to communicate as well with the employers. If there's any issues or anything going on, the employers need to be aware of it. And I also think one of the key things that they can also do is having hobbies. I did that on lockdown. I've got hobbies, but when I was on lockdown, I was having more hobbies because I was so bored and I needed things to do. So I think that's,
I
yeah,
know that
quite
feeling. Amy, I know the guys have covered quite a bit, but is there anything else you wanted to add to that last question just before we go on to the Q&A?
Sure. As an employer, be an authentic leader. You know, if you're talking about wellness, lead from the top and make sure that you're being authentic and you're leading as you want your employees to be, and treat everyone as an individual, because one employee's idea of wellness is different to another. And then from the perspective of the employee, one thing that has changed the way that I start my days by having a morning routine. So before you either get on the tube to go to work or get in your car or sit in front of your laptop, have some me time and just say, right, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes just centering myself. Some of you will know that you can do that by meditating or just sitting still. Do something that just really grounds your energy before you get into work mode. And I promise you, it will change your mindset for the day. It could even be something as simple as, I'm just going to write a list of things I'm thankful for in my life. So you have that positive start to the day. And if anyone does meditate or is interested in meditating, I have got a free meditation that I am happy to share out with anyone who's watching here, and you can use that to start a morning routine and just get your day started with that sort of stillness and that positivity.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, we've got quite a few questions in the chat box, so I'm going to go back up to the top and start from there. I know we've already answered one, but we're going to go with this one first. My company is trying to keep things interesting for well-being, but they're struggling. Exercise classes aren't for us. Are there any other simple ideas? Anyone got any ideas for that one?
I think as I mentioned just a second ago, you know, I think exercise class is great, but then everybody's not into exercise. So again, thinking outside the box. So cooking. I know everybody sometimes thinks about cocktail making, but you know, we also need to be aware that alcohol is not always the answer. We all like a bit of a tipple, but let's get a bit more creative. But yeah, doing like nutrition, getting an outside speaker in, you know, a motivational speaker, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. And has anyone else on the panel got any other ideas?
Yeah, I would say also we did that when we were on lockdown with my guys that I work with, and it was quite good. Just having a Zoom chat now and then, just to catch up with each other, just to see how everyone's getting on and everyone's doing. Sometimes some people just need to see faces, just to have a chat, to feel good or change situation. So I think that having like a weekly or a fortnightly, or how often they want to do it, just to get a catch up, it's good, especially if they're still not, you don't have all the employees back in the office.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. I mean, we found that as well when we was on lockdown. I did it with the club members, the PR Life club members. We just did a little chat. There was about 10 of us, and it was just to see how everyone was doing. And it was actually quite nice to see people, because I got quite lonely as well during the lockdown time. We're going to come to the next one now. How would you ensure a positive culture while most people are working from home? It's an interesting one. Anyone got any thoughts on that at all?
I think, as you just said, Charlotte, I think it is creating a positive culture is to keep communication going. It's all very well working from home, but you've just got to keep checking in with your team members, whether it's a daily phone call, daily meeting, 10 o'clock or whatever it may be. I think that's what's needed. To just keep communication going, make sure people are okay. Keep talking.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise. I'm going to move on to the next one quickly because I'm a bit conscious of time and I want to make sure that we get through everyone's questions. We've got someone here. Any ideas on how to be a supportive virtual manager? Oh, it's just changed. Sorry, I lost it there. Any ideas on how to be a supportive virtual manager and keep good relationships with staff? So they will open up about their well-being. Sorry, the chat moves down when another one comes on. I kept losing it. I'm not doing well today.
We've said it throughout, haven't we?
Yeah.
That constant communication. You might even need to increase the contact with your staff. One thing that I've seen, and I really like it if any of you are on LinkedIn, is I've got some people in my network who are mental health champions within their companies. And sort of once a week or every day, they have a mental health score. And they'll score themselves out of 10 and they'll say, I'm 3 out of 10 today. Or I'm 10 out of 10 today. And I just think maybe if people don't want to go into, I feel really low today, but you could just as a manager go, right, I'm just going to ask you on the mental health scale, 1 to 10, or well-being scale of 1 to 10, where do you put yourself? You kind of got that nice gauge and it doesn't feel too serious either. That could just be a nice little tactic to get people to start to open up maybe.
Brilliant, thank you. The next question here, actually, I believe we probably answered this, and I think you'll all be in agreement. Do you think there should be a wellness champion in the company, someone other than HR? I think you're all nodding your heads, and I think everyone agrees there should be for that one. Excellent.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think we need to remember as well, wellness is such a big subject. I think you probably need to break it down and have champions for different aspects of wellness as well.
I agree.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, and let's remember as well, there's lots of resources out there. Yes, obviously that you can take a mental health first aid awareness course. That's definitely a big one to do. But also, we have a lot of information on our website at Eventwell, so anybody can tap into ideas on there. But also, charities like Mind, they have lots of resources that are there and are free as well. So I think it's really key that companies take a look at the resources and incorporate it into the organisation. And as Amy says, definitely have a champion for different wellness aspects.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we've got one more question on here, which we've got 2 minutes, which is brilliant. How can you get management motivated for well-being? Trying to start from the top and work down. How can we motivate the managers?
I probably would start by saying what we've discussed earlier about leading by example. So if there's a policy in place, we're talking about the managers looking after themselves first. If you're looking after yourself first by leading by example, you're going to be motivated to know that others are looking up to you. So if you are looking after yourself, so you need to ensure that the others are also looking after themselves. So I think that would motivate me to know that this is why it's important. I need to be leading by example. So that's how I would look at it, being from a management side of view. I think it's important that you look after yourselves first and then motivate yourself to then start motivating others.
And maybe also as well, if there's a senior leadership team who feel like, well-being's just another thing for us to think about, well, do what we've been saying, bring in some experts to start getting them on board as well, because sometimes it is the people at the top who are the stress heads, and they're just as bad, so it's if they're experiencing it themselves, they're more likely to pass it on.
Absolutely. I think, and also just to add to that, I think there's plenty of information out there and examples of leadership of people in management positions that have gone out and put in the work to bring well-being into the workplace. So, just Google, what other organizations have done and see how it works.
Amazing. Brilliant. I know there's been a lot of interest for Amy's link. We are going to send it over to Venues and Events Live, and they're going to send it out to everybody, and I'll get that on the main chat. If there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you so much to Venues and Events Live. Thank you so much to my panelists, Amy, Louise and Claudine, for taking up your time this afternoon. And
It's been a pleasure.
that's everything
Thank you.
from us. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.